Hi, this is Garrett Wong. I played Ensign Harry Kim on Star Trek Voyager, and you're listening to Mark Who 42.
Welcome to Mark Who 42 here on Subspace Radio and all across the interweb thingy. My name is Mark Baumgart and I'm your host. Today's show, that's right, we're reviewing Star Trek Con, which is the podcast story of what happened on, well, before Star Trek II and after Space Seed, kind of in between there. Juan Sanmiguel and Vicky Jakubowski are going to review it. Here they are.
Now we're going to talk about another franchise. We're going to be talking about. Now, this is something I'm kind of curious. Hey, Vicky, I'm kind of curious because I asked my housemate, and although he's kind of more of a passive Trek fan, he hadn't heard about this. Did you hear about this before we talked about this?
I had not. And I was like really surprised, but I've kind of been a little myopic at work lately. So I'm like, how did I miss this was coming out? And I was so glad you told me about it.
Okay, my housemate just announced that he's not a passive, but he didn't. But this, like yourself, did not register. And there's probably somebody at Paramount. I mean, the thing is, I think this has been in the works. I heard about it in distance, and I think I found out about it because Reactor, which is the official website of Tor.com, decided to do a review, or maybe it just popped up on my YouTube feed. I do a lot of watching of YouTube videos. I mean, if worse comes to worse, I'll kill time by playing the Mystery Science Theater Forever-thon. So now we have a series, but I think we should do a little background on Khan. I mean, I know a lot of people know about Khan, but I just want to say where he fits in everything. I mean, obviously, played by Ricardo Montalban in 1967's episode Space Seed, which was written by a man by the name of Kerry Wilbur and Gene Elkun, who would become the producer of Star Trek in the later half the first season and first half of the second season. It was an interesting episode. And then the thing is, and then we go and jump. Star Trek the Motion Picture cost $40 million, even though they included the cost of making trying to make a TV show in the middle of it. But It had a lot of costs. It was overrun, and they also made a promise that they had to get into the theaters by December 7th in order to make a deal with the movie theaters. And I think they did the same thing with Wrath of Khan. But because of the problems in production and the fact that they barely got it across the finish line, now the movie made money. It made enough money that they were interested, but I could swear there was an episode of Starlog when they were trying to predict what movies were coming out that they weren't sure that Star Trek 2 was going to happen. I mean, it was an iffy thing, at least initially. So the thing is, they eventually, I think the legend says that they actually giving it to the TV division and see what would happen and develop it. And at some point, Harv Bennett, who had done a lot of television producing. He did $6 Million Man, and he was actually working on a biopic on Golda Meir, which would be, I think, on syndicated television. He would get an Emmy for that. But he decided to look at all the Trek shows, and he thought, well, wait a minute, what he felt the first film lacked was a big villain, or at least an antagonist. And he felt that and I think the promising aspect of a villain he saw with Ricardo Montalban's character Khan, and he felt that was the springboard.
Yes.
And after that, now the thing is, there were a lot of iterations of scripts and ideas coming up.
Yeah.
And eventually, at some point, Nicholas Meyer, who had written a book called The 7% Solution, which was turned into a movie about Sherlock Holmes and Sigmund Freud, and he had directed time after time. So they put him up as director. Now here's I don't know how commonly known this is. He essentially, when he got put on the project, they had a start date of when they needed to start filming. So he looked at all these treatments, scripts, what have you, and took something from here and something from there.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote the script and he wrote the shooting script in 12 days. And he didn't take a writer's credit because he was directing, so they needed a shooting script and he needed to get it done by a certain date because again they were on a big timetable, although the pressure, I get the impression, was not as severe as it was for the motion picture. Now the bad thing is, obviously, we had a great movie. I mean, Star Trek II is considered one of the best and the best Star Trek films, and unfortunately one of the consequences of this is that most of the other movies, with the exception of 4, they always felt they needed a big villain. They needed a Khan, and that's where you get Christopher Lloyd as Commander Kruge.
Yeah.
Obviously, Lawrence Luckbill as Sybok, and Christopher Plummer as what was the name? Blanking out on the name of
I don't remember the name of his character. I just remember all the Hamlet he quoted.
And of course, General Chang, General.
Oh.
It was either Chang or Chang. I think that was his name. But anyway, and then this seeded up into the next generation with Soren, played by the Malcolm McDowell. And then after that, you had the Borg Queen. And then after that, you had F. McMurray, who played the aliens who seem to like plastic surgery for Star Trek Insurrection. Yes. And then you had Tom Hardy playing the evil clone of Captain Picard. And then even in the Kelvin, you had the Romulan who wanted to get even with Spock. Eric Bana, I think, was the actor. And of course, Into Darkness, you had Benedict Cumberbatch, who
come back as Khan.
Yeah, I was really angry. There was a local podcast in Florida that I was listening to. I bumped into him at a convention, so I listened. They gave it away. Somehow they found out earlier on, at least before I saw. And I saw it on the first night just so I could go on the internet. So
yeah.
But I'm just saying that, I mean, and then of course in Star Trek Beyond you had Idris Elba playing. So they always felt that they needed a villain. I mean, I think it was quite brave of Leonard Nimoy saying, no, you don't need a villain. We just need a problem. And that, of course, he had the problem with the whales.
Right. Which is why I think that 4 is probably one of the most favorite, although 2 is a close second for many people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I agree with you. My only problem with 4 was that I don't like the background music. I don't, they didn't have, no, because James Horner, who did the music for Titanic and Aliens, and sadly, and actually, one of his last movies before when he died, before he died was the first Narnia film, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He did the music for that. But no, he did. So the thing is, he did the music for 2 and 3, and I even asked Leonard Nimoy at a convention why they didn't do. Why they didn't get him, and he just said, why didn't they have him on 4? And he kind of said, well, he might not have been available. He actually didn't give me a reason. He just said, well, we wanted to do something different. It's like, or maybe he wasn't available.
We'll say that he was exceedingly busy is the closest I can get to a reason. But even then, it just, sometimes it's interesting the choices that are made, and it's not that they're bad choices. It's just, why did you make this choice but not that choice? And yeah, Horner had done quite a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, but getting back to Khan. Now, one of the bad things I think with doing the script too fast was that I think there were some interesting discrepancies. I mean, the fact that Chekhov wasn't on the show, although that can be easily explained, and the fact that
I love that bit. It's like, how would he recognize him? He wasn't even there yet. Uh,
Well, some people say that he was working on the lower decks, and actually Walter Koenig came up and said that he was that Khan caught him when he was in the bathroom when he took over the ship.
I love it. That's perfect.
But then we move on to, but I think some of the other discrepancies is why didn't they realize that there was a planet missing in the solar system, and
I've heard that one.
other things about Khan. And now, so Star Trek Con, this audio podcast covers what happened to Khan after they set him on Ceti Alpha V. Now, this is not, the expanded universe has also covered this. Greg Cox did 3 novels about Khan. 2 of them were Khan before he left Earth, which was interesting because it also involved every character known in the 20th century of Star Trek at that time, when the novels were released, which I think were the early 2000s. And so it had Khan dealing with Gary Seven and explain. I mean,
Oh,
I think Greg Cox's task was, how come Khan, the 1990s are over, how come Khan never showed up on People magazine? So he was trying to integrate Khan into our modern world, and just how did we miss Khan? And it just kind of, but it was a very good story, and it kind of explained how everything happened given our contemporary world at that time. Now, he did write a 3rd novel, which was called it was the 3rd novel and was set on Ceti Alpha V. I thought it had a title, but then what makes it even more interesting was IDW, the comic book series, decided to do a comic book on what happened to Khan on Ceti Alpha V. And I think when we get into talking about the plot, we can talk about how. Now, I haven't read the Ceti Alpha. I haven't read any of these novels. I never got around. I did
I
like
haven't
Greg
read
Cox.
any of the novels. Yeah.
I read Greg Cox's first 2 novels on Khan's background. I just never got around to grabbing a copy of the 3rd novel about Ceti Alpha V, but I did read a breakdown. Unfortunately, I couldn't read a breakdown for the comic series, although I did get a gist of it, at least in parts of it. I mean, IDW did I think they still have the rights to Trek comics. I'm not sure about that, but they usually did good comic books at the time. Well, DC can't do Trek comics because I think they're angry that essentially you're letting Warner Brothers do their comic books. And sadly, in the 80s, DC did a very good Star Trek comic book. And the thing is, the contracts just expired, and they decided not to renew it, and they did it. Marvel did it for a while, and now IDW, at least the last I checked, IDW, and they did some interesting Star Trek comics, particularly in relationship to the Kelvin series.
Oh, interesting.
So now the interesting thing about this audio series is it's supposedly based, well, they say it's based on a story by Nicholas Meyer. Now, I don't know how much Nicholas Meyer, I mean, even when this program they started this, they said that Nicholas Meyer had a story idea, but he didn't write any of the script, so I don't know how much of the
Right. How much of
plot.
it is truly from him, and how much is from the what were their names?
Kristen
The
Beyer and
Thank you.
Kirsten Beyer and David Mack,
Thank you.
who I know Kirsten. Yeah, she's worked on Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery.
Oh,
I also get her confused with somebody with a similar name, a similar K name, on Lower Decks. And David Mack has done a lot of Star Trek novels and some comics. Uh, oh, and also he did sell something to Voyager, but the thing was never. He sold something to Voyager, but it never got produced.
interesting.
So it so they wrote out they wrote out 9 shows. Now the interesting thing is the show debuted on Star Trek's uh, anniversary. So the first episode dropped on September 8th, which this year was a Monday. And actually they released them all on Monday afternoons. You could get them on YouTube. Where did you get to download them?
I actually went to YouTube. It was the fastest one, and then I realized later that I could have gotten it actually from Apple also.
Okay, I think yeah.
I'd already started it on YouTube, so I just finished it.
Okay, no, I mean I usually listen to my podcasts on a portable MP3 player, so I can listen to it while walking the dog or just riding my bicycle. Also, we got an impressive cast.
We do actually.
I mean, I think I don't know if we got Naveen Andrews as Khan, and if that name doesn't ring a bell to you, he played Saeed in Lost, and also he played, I think his character was Jonas in Sense8. And I always thought it was phenomenal. Oh, he played, by any chance, did you catch Once Upon a Time? I forgot what it was called, Alice in Wonderland. He actually played Jafar. And
he did it very well. He's an extremely talented actor.
Oh yeah, no, he's incredible. I mean, you just can't, you always keep an eye on him. I mean, he's the most interesting guy in the room. I mean, particularly as Jafar, he's playing, he's being a little bit crafty. I mean,
oh yes.
So
I will say that it took me a hot minute to get used to his voice. I mean, he's got a beautiful voice. I love him as an actor, as a voice actor. But of course, I'm a Montalban girl. I grew up watching his movies from the 30s and the 40s, thanks to my mother. And, he's so distinctive. Every character he does, he's got this beautiful, distinctive diction. And so it took me a hot minute it was like, hang on, which one's Khan? I'm confused. And then it just, and then I don't know, about halfway through the first episode, I kind of got over it. It's just hard when you have someone who's either visually or audibly so distinctive, and then there's a change, and you have to take a moment to kind of acclimate to the new one.
Well, I think it was easy for me to acclimate because I think he got one of the things that Montalban got, that I mean, the thing is, I think he's got Khan, particularly in the early episodes, as he was in the TV shows, a guy who's very in control of himself, a guy who's who's a plotter, and that was a challenge when I don't know if you know this story. He said it a lot in interviews. Montalban, when he was saying he was preparing for the movie, he got the script, and the thing is, he was going through it in his head, and he goes, "Oh my God, if I'm sounding like Mr. Rourke." And so the thing is, he asked Harv Bennett for a copy of Space Seed so he could rewatch it a few times and get back into character and get what the character was. And then he had to, extrapolate the fact that, okay, now, 15 years later, and you have all of this happen to him. And, obviously, and I think we see the evolution of him going from somebody in control to the kind of like passionate and, to use the word, the wrathful nature of Khan. Now, I was surprised because I thought I heard this voice for Marla MacGyver's. I was kind of surprised it was Ren Schmidt.
I will say that almost from the beginning, she sounded enough like the original actress that it didn't click in my head the way that Khan was different. Okay. But I recognized the name, but I couldn't think of where I'd seen her from.
Oh, well, the thing is, I watched her. Actually, I watched her on The American. She was a Soviet handler but her big role right now, and it's still ongoing, hopefully, is For All Mankind. She plays in the 60s. She plays the only woman at main control at Houston. She's the only woman there, and she becomes essentially the leader at Houston, or a leader at NASA. I always felt they did her character dirty in the last couple of seasons because she did something where, well, she committed treason essentially, and instead of facing up to it, she actually defected to the Soviet Union, and then she has to come back, and then her protection goes away, and she finally goes to jail at the end of the last season. So what
Oh,
will
wow.
happen to her? Oh yeah, no,
This looks like something I should watch.
you haven't. Well, wait. You obviously, if you have access to Apple
I do.
Podcasts, that means that you have a free. Don't you? Doesn't that mean you have Apple TV for free? Or am I miscorrect? Oh, okay. I thought all
No,
Apple.
Apple Podcasts are free. Apple TV, but I do have a subscription. Now this is okay. Another one to go on my list.
Oh yeah, no, it's an excellent show. I mean, on a tangent, and I know that Mark says that we're the king of tangents. But the only thing I don't like about For All Mankind, which if you haven't seen it, it's about an alternate world where we did not go to the moon first, but as a result, we have a competitive space race up until the 90s that we're already on Mars by the 90s.
This sounds like my kind of show.
In fact, one of the co-creators of the show was Ron Moore, who worked on Star Trek Deep Space, worked on Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, and later created the 21st Century Battlestar Galactica. And the thing is, he joked around that he was creating the alternate future that Star Trek would have had. So he's trying to create the space program we wanted to have when we were watching Star Trek in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So that's his. So that was his idea. So, and she does a very good job. I mean, sadly, one of the reasons they didn't have MacGyvers in Star Trek 2 was that the original actress, I think, got sick. I think she had, I forget which disease she had. I forget if it was muscular dystrophy or muscular sclerosis, but I think she was wheelchair bound. So that was one of the reasons.
You're right.
Her name was Madeline Rue.
Yes, because she'd been in a lot of things in the 60s and 70s, even into the 80s. She was like that guest star that was in everything.
Oh yeah. As I said, I was just surprised because I thought, oh wait, this sounds familiar. And then finally, while preparing for this show, I realized who it was. Now I'm not as familiar with Sonia Cassidy, who's Rosalind Lear.
Mm-hmm.
No, she does a great job. I mean, she's kind of a narrator, the closest thing we have to a narrator of the series. And we'll talk about her when we get into plot. And coming back, George Takei is in it as Captain Sulu because of the Excelsior. George sounds okay, but you can tell he's a little bit old. At least that's my opinion. I love him to death, but
he sounds a little different than he did back in the day, as we all do.
But he's supposed to be older. I mean, this is supposedly after the death of. I mean, Kirk is dead at this point, so this is way after the Undiscovered Country. But we do get a young Tuvok, Tim Russ, which plays on the fact that he was an Inside. Well, this was set up in Voyager when Voyager got to do their 30th anniversary episode where they showed somehow they got to go back in time and witness Sulu's attempt to try to rescue Kirk during the Undiscovered Country, which unfortunately failed for reasons that's in the episode. And we find out that Tuvok actually when he was younger, served on the Excelsior under Sulu. No, I think he left. He left Starfleet for a while, started a family, and then came back as Tuvok because of stuff that happened in the episode. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't watched that episode.
Oh, it's been a long time. I'm losing my creds here.
So that's those are the big cast members. I mean, and they did have a big other cast. I mean, I'm looking at the Wikipedia entry, and they've also got
they had some really talented people doing a variety of the characters, but I think that covers the big ones.
So anyway, I think we've talked about enough background, and I think so when we come back, we'll talk about the plot, what we liked about it, and what we liked about the show.
Okay.
And then we'll go in depth about the show and what our hopes are in the future, if there is one.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about that when we come back.
We're going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to have more of our report on here on Mark Who 42.
Don't go away. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Mark Who 42 after this.
Oh, hey, I got something.
Since 2009, we have been the premier cartoon podcast here at the Geekcast Radio Network. We are Tooncast. From taking you beyond the cartoons we grew up with to seasonal saucy toon talk, and now we get the origins of Toonsters everywhere as we ask guests 30 questions about their cartoon watching experiences, plus so much more. Tooncast is back. Join me, TF2 and Mike, and the rest of the GCRN crew as we give you all the toon talk you will ever need, only on the GCRN and wherever you consume your podcasts. We are beyond good, beyond evil, beyond your wildest imagination. We are all tunes all the time here on Tooncast.
Yeah. Get ready for the ultimate geek experience right here in the Sunshine State. Florida Geek Scene presents a full calendar of events and conventions. From anime to horror, we've got it all. Meet your favorite stars, find rare collectibles, and immerse yourself in your passions. Experience the thrill of cosplay and witness amazing live performances. Stay up to date with the latest news and reviews all across Florida. Florida Geek Scene, where pop culture happens. Visit us online for more. Don't miss out on the fun. Join us at Florida Geek Scene. FloridaGeekScene.com.
You are listening to Mark Who 42's Universe.
We're back with more of Mark Who 42. I'm your host, Mark Baumgarten. Let's return to Vicky Jakubowski and Juan Sanmiguel as they talk about Star Trek, the latest story podcast that's come out from the Star Trek universe.
Now we're going to talk about the plot of Star Trek Con. Now, this is a lot of flashbacks, but the main narrative device is that Dr. Rosalind Lear has asked Starfleet to take her to Ceti Alpha V to find the records and journals of Khan and his people. Now, this takes place, as we mentioned, after the death of James T. Kirk, so this is several years after the Undiscovered Country. Captain Sulu and Tuvok are still on board the Excelsior, and they take her to Ceti Alpha V. Now, she's a little bit accusatory because she wonders, did Kirk know that Ceti Alpha VI was unstable? I mean, and that's what is investigating. Did Kirk knowingly abandon? And, Captain Sulu is very taken aback on this because he was there at both occasions.
Right.
Although technically George wasn't in the episode for whatever reason. He just wasn't in it. But just like with Chekhov, we'll assume that he was there.
Yes.
But he was there at both occasions.
That, from the beginning, and anyone doing a thesis or a scientific paper or trying to come to the truth of an event, she starts it in the wrong way, where she's made assumptions about Kirk. I mean, they're not horrible assumptions knowing Kirk, but
no, I think it is, because I think, Kirk is still regarded as a hero. I mean, obviously, some people like to tear heroes down. And the thing is, and we should warn you, hey, if you have not seen Star Trek Gone, go and listen to it, because we're going to spoil it. Because, as we'll find out, Dr. Lear has an ulterior motive that we will find out at the very end of the show. Although, I think we'll start to suspect. I don't know if I ever did suspect. I know there was something up with her, because I couldn't imagine that they were going to do a story. I mean, look, I'm an original series fan. I couldn't imagine that they were going to imply that Kirk knew. And the thing is, more importantly, that Spock knew, because I forgot if in the first episode, I had to re-listen to episode 7 for some detail recently in preparation for this. And, she said that, did Spock get it wrong? Because you would think they would check out the solar system to make sure everything was okay, and Khan had a fair chance. But the story opens up in the first episode. We might not go through each episode in detail, because while prepping up for this, although we remember the story in the big picture, we might not get the little strokes in it. So forget what. There are some endings that I'll remember, like what happened at the episode ended and where we went to. What the cliffhanger was for next week. And actually, I just realized we could get the breakdown of Paradise, which is the first episode. Uh, I'm kind of surprised they couldn't get William Shatner just to do one little voiceover, but he is expensive. I mean, he will. They tried to get him on Star Trek Enterprise. Now, he didn't charge. The producers thought that what he asked for was not too much, but the studio thought it was too much, and also they didn't want to do a Kirk story in the last
Um,
season of Enterprise, even though the producer Manny Coto in an interview says, "Oh, it was more expensive, but it wasn't insanely expensive. We could have afforded it if we wanted to." So anyway, we start
he does have
Khan.
a habit, though, of taking over.
True. Although, so we get it in the middle of Khan and Marla and Joaquin. Now, the
Yeah.
only big disappointment I have with this show is that they create a bunch of new characters. Now, the thing is, in the Greg Cox books, I mean, Greg did this thing where he listened because there's a scene in Khan in the Space Seed episode where Khan contacts everybody, working for him who's taken over the Enterprise, not realizing that Kirk and Spock have escaped and have started gassing everybody. And the thing is, all those characters, I can remember two characters' names like Ling and McPherson. They became main characters in the books because they
Mm,
worked with Khan, and none of those
gotcha.
characters showed up in this. Although Joaquin did. Joaquin was Khan's number two, and he's most notable for being a cad because he literally, decks Uhura to, follow his instructions. Oh, Vicky, horrible. I mean, laughing at, I mean,
I'm
teasing, I
sorry.
know. He's actually going to do it again until Marla, tells him not to,
True.
and also we established another thing that wasn't said in the series that they use the term augments, which became a thing, I think, in Star Trek Enterprise. I don't know if it was a thing in,
Because I don't think that's what we called them in the beginning.
no, I
I
don't
don't
know if
remember
the,
ever using that term.
well, they were called Supermen and, it was called Eugenics Wars and stuff like that, but
Yes.
they decided to use the term. Now, it turns out that there were a bunch of Khan rescued a bunch of teenage or underage augments, and one of them is Joachim, or I don't know how you pronounce it. It's Joachim. That was a character played by Judson Scott. He actually was a guest at, yep, Judson Scott at Joachim. I think it's Joachim. I just know that Khan.
Oh,
Now in Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. He is Khan's number two. But also to explain, the bad thing about Wrath of Khan was casting because everybody kind of looked young. Like if you subtracted 15 years, they would have been 10 years old. Khan was the only one who looked kind of
uh-huh.
old enough. Now, some people at the time said, well, maybe it's because they're Supermen and they don't age as fast. But then why did Khan seem to age the full 15 years? And they tried to rationalize that. But they decided to explain it by saying Khan did rescue some augments who were treated badly and as children. And we also find, I forget if in this episode we find that some of the augment women under Khan were also sterilized or could not have children, which is an issue between uh, Ursula, who's one of Khan's
Yeah.
people, and I forget, is Madot uh her wife, and they're trying to have children, and they're trying to use Federation, and I forget if in this episode they're using Federation technology, but the
I
interesting
think they
thing,
are.
okay, but I think the thing is, they're settling down. They've got all of this stuff that, Kirk left them a bunch of rations and equipment and stuff like that, but they also want to try to live off the land and get on it. And Khan is envisioning stuff. I mean, at some point, somebody is asking about something, and he points out that there's an area and goes, you know what's going to be over there? A stadium. Now, people will think, well, that's kind of trivial, but no, Khan is thinking about the future, that, that this
Yes.
is going to be his empire. He's going to lead his people, and he's going to do the best he can. Now, I forget how this episode ends because one of the things we are going to know. Now, the bad thing about prequels is that, you got to check certain boxes. And
Yes.
unfortunately, we're going to encounter, as we found out in Star Trek II, the only surviving living inhabitant of Ceti Alpha V. I don't know if that happens in episode one or two. Now, and
Mm,
also
mm.
note all these episodes about 30 minutes. I think the last episode
Yeah.
might have gone closer to 40 minutes, like 38 minutes. So, they were very well paced, and I think they did try to develop everything. Oh, and the other thing interesting in Paradise is Marla is having second thoughts about that and Khan finds out that she smuggled a communicator
Yeah.
and tried to contact the Enterprise, and Khan found it and destroyed the communicator and put a rift, I think, in their relationship for a little bit.
Yes, because it definitely took a while for the relationship to develop, which is interesting because where it left off on Space Seed, it felt like there was no question. And so the beginning episode of this, actually the first couple of episodes, it was very interesting that she kind of backtracked, which absolutely could have happened. But I did find it interesting that she wasn't, the way the character was played in Space Seed, she was so head over with him that, I mean, she couldn't even think for herself anymore. And so it was kind of nice, but a little, again, something I had to get used to, that of course it would take time, et cetera, et cetera. And I liked the use of in the second episode where they're telling the story of Scheherazade, which is also known as the Arabian Nights or 101 Arabian Nights, where she tells a story each night to save her life. That's where we get the story of Aladdin from. Ironically, because I felt that she was kind of doing her own Scheherazade for a while, trying to just stay alive while she was trying to figure out what she was and what she wanted to be.
Exactly. Now, actually, one of the things that people criticize about Marla's character was how she was overcome or, seduced by Khan, they felt. And do you think that this show actually tried to correct that? I mean, I guess that was one of the aims.
I do.
And tried to give her more agencies.
Yes, because now, of course, it's important to remember that it was the late 60s. Women couldn't even ask for divorces in the United States at that point. So it's a little understandable in context that character was not as strong as she probably should have been written and would have been written in later Star Trek series. But I did like that because she made her far more three-dimensional in this audio drama and far more interesting.
Now, we might be cutting in a lot of plot, but at some point we discovered the Ceti eels. And unfortunately, I think is that how Joaquin dies? The original number 2? Was it due to the Ceti eels, or did he have an accident?
There was a lot of things going on at once.
All right, no fair.
Follow it.
Well, very early on, Joaquin, who was Khan's number 2, gets killed. And Joaquin, who I think, was his adopted son, now becomes Khan's adopted son. Now, he is a young man at this point. I mean, obviously, he's a teen, so 15 years later, he looks like Judson Scott.
Yeah.
He becomes Khan number 2. And at some point, the Ceti eels attack some of Khan's people. And they even tried to explain some of the biological things, which I thought was kind of interesting. I think Ursula, who's one of Khan's top people, and also I think the top scientist of Khan's people. But unfortunately, they don't realize at some point one of Khan's people gets the Ceti eel sneaks into their ear, and they don't know about it, and they don't know what's happening.
Right.
The thing is, the guy is kind of out of it, and in his delirium, you hear Khan says, "You've got to fight." And unfortunately, he kills another one of the colonists.
Yes.
And now here we see Khan as something that you'll have to think about, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, because the only way they can find out what's happened to Khan's fellow exile is that, in privacy, Khan strangles him so they can do an autopsy and figure out, and this is how they figure out how the Ceti eels can take over a human being and infect someone. Now, is Khan going too far, or is he just doing what is necessary, which will, I think, be a recurring theme later on as we go through the story.
It's an interesting arc that we follow with Khan in this series, because he doesn't become crazed with grief/anger until towards the end. And I feel like they kind of do that arc to show why he was the way he was in Wrath of Khan. I don't know. There were some parts of it that I felt like they were really trying maybe too hard to make him likable / reasonable / just trying to do whatever he could to help his people survive, when, to be honest, Khan from the Space Seed was described as, a new Napoleon, a new Caesar, not exactly somebody who was altruistic. And I felt like they played him a little bit more altruistic in the beginning and just desperately trying to do what he could to survive, and only became hard because of everything that happened. I don't know if I agree with that arc, but it's not a horrible arc. I think he was a lot more evil than they wanted him to be in the beginning of this audio drama.
Now, they take care of the Ceti eels, or they think they take care of the Ceti eels, but then
Yeah.
using the technology that was left to them by the Enterprise, they're able to discover that there's something off with Ceti Alpha VI and that they're going to be
Uh,
in trouble soon because I forget if it was a telescope or some other device where they detected that Ceti Alpha VI was very unstable and they were going to see some trouble. But at the same time, now this is an interesting thing. An alien race known as the Elborians, they crash land with their spaceship, their leader Del Mundo, and they have immense telepathic powers. And although there is obviously they fight at first, but then they decide to try to negotiate and try to see if they can assist themselves. Now, I just want to make one interesting point. I know that in the breakdown of the third Khan novel by Greg Cox and in the comic series, and I think this leads into it, you always have to add in a mix. Now, the thing is, it's interesting. Something's got to give, and the Elborians will find out what their purpose is. But it also leads into a schism with Khan's people because we have a guy named Ivan, who
right.
seems to, particularly after the Elborians come in and the team start working with him, he doubts the Elborians. But at the same time, Khan sees a need for them, and particularly in order to survive the catastrophe that will happen when Ceti Alpha V finally disassembles. In fact,
Yeah.
the Elborians find a place where they can shelter, which has a decent water supply. And also they have a plan of fixing their ships. But unfortunately, while Marla MacGyver's is taking a bath in a hot spring, she's attacked by a Ceti eel. But this is after the good news that she was pregnant with Khan's child. In fact, in a few episodes, or I think in one episode 3 or episode 4, no, it was probably episode 3. They decided to marry and have a formal marriage ceremony. Marla convinced them to
A very traditional Earth sounding wedding ceremony, I might add.
Well, actually, that was one thing. I mean, one of the things that Greg Cox noted that Khan was identified as a Sikh, but I guess Kerry Wilbur, Gene Kuhn, Gene Roddenberry, nobody on the production team didn't know that Sheiks don't shave their beards. That is their tradition, and Greg Cox
That's
realized that.
true.
So Greg had to explain that, and the thing is, in the second novel, or at the end of the beginning of the second novel, when Khan has decided that he's going to, go and be become a warlord. He walks into Gary Seven's office when he's not there and destroys Gary's computer, so he won't be an obstacle. And Roberta Lincoln noticed that he shaved, and he goes, "Yes, I'm going to be my own man, and I'm going to. But that's why I'm
Which would
shaving.
sound like Khan.
I am shaving my beard because now I am no longer just Khan Nguyen Singh. I am Khan. I'm a leader.
Right.
I'm a man of my own. I will not be bound by traditions." So and that's to explain it. So yes, it is a traditional, but it does establish at that point the relationship. And it's they had problems in the early episodes, but now they've worked it out. They're expecting a baby. They're excited because they've had problems with pregnancies among the augments. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, we all know what's going to happen. I mean, unfortunately, that's the bad thing about prequels. We know that she's going to get a Ceti eel, and unfortunately, Khan has to make the decision. They can maintain her life so the baby can come out, but essentially
Right.
she's effectively dead. They can't do anything about her, but they are able to save the baby, whose name is Kali. It's
Yes.
a young girl. And one of the interesting things in these later episodes of Khan is that we get to see Khan as a father. And I think he's being a very doting father, and I can buy that. He loves her to bits.
Yes.
He indulges her a lot. But at the same time, and now in that same episode where we meet Khan's daughter, and Khan's daughter Kali is also bonded with Delmunda, who's the leader of the Elborians, and they're getting their spaceship ready to hopefully find rescue. Because at this point, Khan is doubting that Starfleet is ever going to come back, and if they do get off this planet, they're
Yeah.
not going to go to Starfleet for help. But we find out from Delamunda that he eventually confesses to Khan through mental telepathy that their spaceship drive is what caused the breakup of Ceti Alpha V, Ceti Alpha VI, and obviously destroying Khan's chance of paradise. And the only reason he doesn't kill Delamunda at that point is because Kali comes in, and Kali, tells her father, don't kill her friend, or don't hurt her friend, don't fight her friend. And, Khan cannot deny her anything. I mean, to be fair, he's at least not in front of her, and
Yeah.
the uneasy truths comes back. Now, at the same time, earlier on, because of some tension between the Elborians and Khan's people, Ivan is kicked out, and
Right.
everybody thinks he's dead, and then he comes back just before launch because Khan does double cross Del Munda because he's going to be on the crew. Kali's going to be on the crew. They can only put 4 people on the ship that they've got with the
Yeah.
resources they have. And then, and unfortunately they clear the ship. It's going to destroy their current habitat, and they're going to have to go back to their old habitat with their limited rations. So we get to a couple of things happen, when they're about to do the launch. At some point, Khan decides that he's going to stay with his people and make them go of it, and he trusts.
Yeah.
I forget. He entrusts his daughter with one of the people on the ship, and he goes on, and he has to fight Ivan for control of the ship. And the Venture does launch, and unfortunately it kills, I think, all the Elborians because of the way that the ship launched to clear out of the cave. They get sent out. Now, the bad thing is Khan cannot establish contact with the ship after the launch, and he loses his cool, and he destroys the radio.
Yes.
But earlier on, Tuvok made an analysis of Ceti Alpha V and could not find a wreckage of any type of ship anywhere on Ceti Alpha V. And that's where we get into the confrontation. I mean, at this point, after they find out about the Elborians and their joint space flight and about how their ship destroyed Ceti Alpha VI, Dr. Lear decides that, Kirk and Spock were not responsible for what happened to Khan and his people.
Yes.
But then we find out, guess what? I mean, now it's probably obvious that Dr. Lear is actually Kali Nguyen Singh. She's Khan's daughter. She's grown up. She and her guardians found a safe haven, but they never told Starfleet for fear of, they didn't trust Starfleet.
Right.
And they couldn't rescue Khan's people without incriminating themselves, particularly since the Federation, as we found out in recent seasons of Star Trek Strange New Worlds and DS9, has hostile towards augmented people.
Yes.
And that's where we end. And, Tuvok finds out and promises to keep her secret. And we hear in the last logs, that Khan is very angry. That, he believes Kali is dead, and now he is focusing all of his anger on James Kirk. And that's how we end the series.
For years until Wrath of Khan.
Yes. So anything else you want to say about the plot or the events or anything else?
No, I thought it was interesting. I did figure, now trying to think, because I know they had mentioned it in the first episode, but by the time I got to like the 3rd or 4th episode, I was trying to remember how many years had passed since the events of Wrath of Khan and Space Seed, and trying to remember the timeline for the modern day. Okay, but it was after Kurt died. And my first thought, honestly, by the 3rd episode, that the Dr. Lear, who was putting everything together, had to be related to the child, especially when we didn't know that he had a daughter specifically from the shows. So I was like, but there's got to be a relationship. There's got to be a connection. I'd forgotten that it was such a more compact timeline. And of course, it could then be the grown-up daughter, because she was only like 5 when the ship went, when she got off of Ceti Alpha. So it quickly became, she was too emotionally interested in it, so there had to be a connection. But I liked that story. I actually, although I struggled in the beginning because I am probably biased. Oh, I know I'm biased. Who am I kidding? And very quickly it got me interested. The character developments got me interested. Finding out what happened between Space Seed and Wrath of Khan got me interested. And I actually was kind of sad when it was over, because I was invested by that point. And I don't know where they could really go from here Well, I guess we could then find out what happens to Khan and his people between when the spaceship flies off and when Wrath of Khan begins. But still, it gave me a nice, not neat, not tied in a bow, with some new, unexplained, or not prepared for twists and turns, but it gave me some answers between Space Seed and Wrath of Khan. So I like that.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly between Space Seed and Wrath of Khan, it's 15 years, which is the actual time between the show and the movie. And I guess they implied that, I think they implied that it's 3 years since Wrath of Khan, because I think they say this is Khan was exiled 18 years ago, or at least
Right.
that's what happens, or at least that's what Wikipedia says. Uh, some people, yeah, no, I read a review by Keith DeCandido, who writes for Reactor.com. He did a lot of Star Trek reviews, and there's possibilities, because supposedly we only covered the first 5 years of Khan's exile. So could they do more in 10 years? It's possible, but I haven't heard, at least the wiki hasn't come. I don't think the wiki has.
I haven't heard any confirmation if they're going to try and do any more.
Yeah, and maybe, but if it ends, this would be a good place to end it. But I wouldn't mind seeing other podcasts. I mean, one of the rumors of why the first season of Star Trek Discovery was kind of a little nutty was because I think they were originally thinking about doing an anthology series, like each season would be something different. Now I'm not sure. That's what I've heard. I don't know how tight that rumor was, how serious that rumor was going to be, but I wouldn't mind seeing other, things like, I don't know, there could be other stories that you can tell using a podcast, and and to be honest, getting Naveen Andrews and Ren Schmidt, who are
right.
I mean, Ren's on a big show. I mean, For All Mankind's a big show on Apple, and I forget if Naveed got nominated for Emmys on Lost when it was initially out or not, but obviously he was a big part of Lost, so he is a big name. So they went out at expense and hired names on this, so it was nice to see that they put that effort in. So maybe this will be the closest, as far as I know, this could be the closest thing that Star Trek has to Big Finish audios.
That I can see that, and it's funny too, because in some of the stuff I read, so after I finished it, I then listened to other things, listened to other reviewers, stuff like that, and I will say that overall, I had a couple of people who mentioned that, boy, it feels like Big Finish, and overall, it felt like most people were enjoying the series. Some people nitpicked this and that, and of course I nitpicked myself, but I think overall it was good quality. It was a good story, amazing acting, and it makes it, I think for any Star Trek fans of most levels, if you were ever invested in the Khan character, they're going to find it interesting. They may not agree with everything, but they're going to find it interesting. And I kind of would like to see more quality like this, because there's so many unanswered questions in the world of Star Trek. There's so many unfinished stories, and when you enjoy something, and being a big fangirl of Star Trek, I kind of can't get enough, but I don't have time to read like I used to. So it was really nice to have something like this that I could be listening to while I was working. It was really nice. Okay. And I hope I see more.
I don't see how we can top that off anymore. So I think that's it for Star Trek Con. I think you should all catch it. And that'll be it for this episode of Marku 42. I'm Juan in Orlando.
And Vicky and Reno.
And that'll be all. Catch you later.
We hope you enjoyed all that about Star Trek Con. We will be back in 2 weeks with more Mark Who 42. Bye, everyone. You've been listening to Mark Who 42. Your hosts, Mark Baumgarten, Vicky Jakubowski, Juan Sanmiguel, and Zion Quiros. Mark Who 42's Universe is produced and directed by Mark Baumgarten. Copyright 2025.